Okay.
Yeah.
Had a good lunch?
Yes.
We have a little bit of a breeze here, which is a major blessing. Okay.
Go back and forth.
Yeah, I need to see when to do the Zoom.
Is CNN camera rolling?
Yeah, we can start.
Okay, CNN is here. Good. So, first we want to thank Paul for so much information and depth this morning on the background of Theraphi, and there will be more time for questions and conversations with Paul later, especially tomorrow morning, and more Q&A is available. This afternoon is entitled Fractal Implosive Conjugate Charge Wave Propagation Geometry, which is a good one for those who speak French and are looking for long words. But basically, the idea here is that if you get a handle on the wave mechanics for yourself, because you know what made Einstein powerful is he could visualize and imagine what it was to ride a wave. What does it feel like to be a wave? That's the actual question of the moment. And to actually imagine the feeling of riding a wave and being a wave is how Einstein imagined, oh, what if you were riding a wave of light and your relationship was relative? When the wave of light goes in a circle, it stores inertia and it's called mass. And when a wave of light goes in a circle, it has a period of rotation named time. So basically the rotation of light, or we shall say charge as we've been discussing, is the only definition of origin and cause of both mass and time. That's really what relativity is. So we want to take that empowerment that comes from understanding what it is to be a wave and ride a wave. You know, at first people were a little bit reluctant to think, when we could imagine we were particles and made of billiard balls, it was more solid, right? But if they say, oh, you are only a wave, you might take that as an insult. But when you think about it further, it's actually a recipe to immortality, truly. So to understand the pure wave mechanic nature of the psychology of life and healing, that's the challenge of the moment, the empowering of the moment. Evelyn, is that okay? We have people sitting next to the doors who are watching them, so the wind doesn't...
Is it just in case
Yes,
the
right.
wind?
Well, we're watching. We're watching very carefully. Thank you, Evelyn. Yeah, appreciate it. There's a nice little natural breeze here. Everybody on the video, we're in South France, midsummer, and it's a little bit... I might take my shirt off later, so it's a warning.
Rules in here, you're not allowed to take it off.
He's still hurt.
That's what I was just told.
Having a wave.
Yeah, that's right. So you know, there's a saying in physics that's called wave constantly in fine structure, as in the fine structure constant. So if the universe is made of a single contiguous substance which behaves like a fluid and is compressible, and that compressible fluid, as in Dewey Larson's famous book, Everything is Motion, Everything is a Wave, if that compressible fluid is charge, and compression and rarefaction in that fluid is what we call plus and minus charge, suddenly you're very close to understanding the unified field for yourself. But then you come to the next question, which is, well, that's fine if that's charge. If that charge is rotating, we see it stores some inertia. We name that mass. It's our only definition of mass. And when that charge rotates, it has a period of rotation, and thus is our only definition of time. So clearly, by teaching charge to rotate, you get to be the creator of mass and time, right? So you now have solved a few of the problems in physics, but the problem that seems to have stumped NASA and Einstein and Stephen Hawking is, why does an object fall to the ground? And unfortunately, if you don't know why an object falls to the ground, you actually won't know why life exists and Theraphi exists, because it's the same physics. And you actually won't know why perception exists. So there's a certain geometry of waves that allows them to fall together in such a way that they create what's called implosive charge collapse. In fact, infinite charge collapse is Einstein's name for gravity. However, remember that no one ever taught Einstein what a fractal was? And fractal is mathematically clearly the only possible infinite compression. However, no one ever taught an electrical engineer before me what a fractal field was. And now that we have fractalfield.com, hopefully somebody knows. No. So if we could model what a fractal field is, we would have directly answered Einstein's question of infinite charge collapse, and therefore what is gravity. So if there were a geometry that could allow charge to collapse in such a way that charge compression, perfected charge compression, we know in mathematics perfected compression defines fractality. It's one of the highest of thousands of definitions of fractality is perfected compression. So if we now knew what electrically perfected compression was, which is directly Einstein's challenge, suddenly we'd understand fractal fields and therefore the nature of gravity. And that's the same as asking the following question. What is the form of compression of charge that on the way toward compression would produce acceleration of charge? Remember when Einstein said, I'm picking on Einstein today, we love the guy, he did a lot of great work, but he made a few big blunders, like the speed of light is not a speed limit. Oops. And it isn't about bending space-time, no, it's about bending charge, let's be clear. So, and in fact, the path through the speed of light is exactly what we're going to be discussing today when we talk about longitudinal waves and the Theraphi. So these questions are directly related to our immediate issue of how we produce a rejuvenation field, a negentropic field, a living field. So infinite implosive charge compression is a form of compression that produces acceleration on the way to center. Another way of saying producing what Schauberger worked for, which is implosion. So we're looking for a form of compression that creates acceleration on the way to center. And that's basically what this issue is about. If we look at this top-down, oblique, and then side view, so the 5-10 spirals of the golden mean are the top-down view of, I proved, hydrogen, we're going to discuss that, and it's the top-down view of DNA and every living protein and the Earth grid and the universe and a lot of spiritual things too. So the reason that every living protein and hydrogen are built this way is as follows. It creates a geometry that allows compression of charge to become acceleration of charge. You've heard me tell this story before, but since it's so basic, we're just going to review. The golden mean ratio is the only ratio that can allow a wave to cross itself recursively, constructively. And so when it adds and multiplies its wavelength, it's also adding and multiplying its wave velocity, which is called heterodyning phase velocity. In other words, heterodyning just means recursive interference, as in music. And phase velocity means the speed of the wave front. You know, the surfer dude, Garrett Lisi? No, the surfer is riding the curl on the wave, and then he ducks into the curl on the wave, and then the wave collapses, and the surfer is shot like a gun out of the tube, right? That's an example of the speed of the wave going this way, and the speed of the wave going this way. When the wave collapsed, the speed, the wave front, phase velocity, added and multiplied, and when those wave velocities added and multiplied, the surfer went zoom. So that was a form of compression that produced acceleration. That's our issue. So when the wave fronts add and multiply, their wave velocity or wave speed, this wave now going towards center, a portion of that electrical inertia of charge is now been accelerated. And and Einstein did get this right, their acceleration of charge cannot be discriminated from gravity. You see what I'm saying? When you're on an elevator and you're being accelerated upward, that feeling of being pulled down, there is no experiment that can tell you the difference between that and gravity. It is the same. So if you have defined the origin of acceleration of charge, you have defined the cause of gravity. So Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and NASA move over. You now know why an object falls to the ground, and they don't. Be clear. And if you don't know why an object falls to the ground, you cannot know the origin of life, perception, consciousness, rejuvenation, negentropy, Theraphi, cool stuff. So this is called implosive charge compression. And that centripetal force generated is Schauberger key. That's why we call the vortex nozzle in the imploder Schauberger stream. Now, so This, in my view, and in the title of my book, Origin of All Negentropic or Self-Organizing Forces. Remember, the term negentropy is not a mystery. Entropy just means moving to disorder. Negentropy means moving to order. And all of physics seems to believe that the universe is condemned to entropy. I have set my life work to fix that. Hello, physics, the universe is not condemned. Hello, there is a way out of chaos, and this is it, and the only way, actually. So this precession toward negentropy is the next mystery we must unravel here, because you now understand why, if you get waves of charge in this geometry, for example, Theraphi, hydrogen, DNA, and vortices, and implosion and Schauberger, if you get waves in this geometry, like hydrogen, they produce a suction of charge towards center. That's now clear to you. You see why you produce a suction of charge towards center in only this geometry, because golden ratio was the trick. See, art world knew that golden ratio defined beauty, but the art world never knew why until me, actually, because the reason it defines beauty is because it defines order, actually. And the reason it defines order is wave mechanics, a pure principle. And that reason is because golden ratio solves the problem of maximum constructive wave interference. And we wrote those equations to prove it. Fractalfield.com/mathematics of fusion. You take simple wave equations, if you add and multiply a bunch of waves together and see what ratio allows most waves to remain alive, guess what? Octaves are the worst. Maximum destructive interference, quite literally. You heterodyne a large number of waves and you do octaves, and nothing remains. So it's literally maximum destruction, which is perfect for hexes and ice and crystallization. It's not that it's evil, but it's perfect for isolating charge. But however, if you want to distribute charge, use the opposite of the octave, which is music based on golden ratio. The entire plant world never used octaves musically. Sorry. Mother Nature knew better. Mother Nature used phyllotaxis and golden ratio because perfected constructive wave interference is also perfected wave distribution. Perfected wave distribution is the solution to every spiritual mystery, which is the same as perfected compression. And perfected wave compression is the solution to alchemy, urban design, architecture, data storage, computer history, mindfulness, and going through death, for a few other things. It's a very useful thing to understand perfected compression. There's nothing more important. The history of computers, the history of discovering compression. The history of urban design, the history of discovering, the history of information density, the history of mindfulness, the history of how you get memory through birth with rebirthing. Discovering the geometry of perfected compression. So that is the question. So we've answered the question of how only this geometry electrically produces a centripetal force. You now understand, because suddenly the charge really sucks, actually. I mean, it really sucks towards center. So this is the origin of suction, quite literally, which we say centripetal forces. This is Schauberger's life. This is the reason why the minute before Schauberger's piezoelectrically doped water vortex electrically began generating power from gravity, the minute before it started to work, and it worked so well, Hitler wrote him a big check, was when it spontaneously started getting colder. This is why. Now, so we now know why it made suction, but why did it get colder? Why did the tip of that tube of that Theraphi spontaneously start getting colder? Why did in the Joe cell and the Brown's gas, when it was really working, these gases come out? Many stories. Icicle. Yeah. So why? What is the physics? The physics is negentropy, self-organization, rejuvenation. It's self-organization and negentropy is sometimes called time reversal. When it was first documented in physics.
And as things cool down, the molecules move slower. So the molecules are moving farther apart the hotter it gets, and that adds more energy into the system, and then it falls apart. But as things cool down, they condense and slow down and move together, and you cryogenically freeze something, You're locking in the molecular structure.
and increasing order.
Right.
So heat is a name for disorder. Basically, it's quite obvious. So, which is why Schauberger spent so much of his life proving that the most powerful healing water and most powerful water, floating logs, and most powerful water, braiding, was the coldest water. And if you kept the water cooler in the rivers with the shade, your water is healthier. And actually, the water spits out what does not fit its own matrix if it's kept cold, because it keeps its charge spin. So the coldness is part of the magic.
Is it why xylitol, when you eat xylitol, is cold?
Interesting. Yes, xylitol. This is Jan Sisek, everyone, from UK, who's a specialist in xylitol and part of our I Thrive project, and harvested the xylitol personally in Poland from the trees, didn't it? Yeah, no, actually, that little cold taste at a certain moment. Also, when Valerie walked into Europe's leading cold fusion physicist and explained to him why when you hold the palladium, which is dodeca in your hand, it spontaneously gets colder. And that was a cool moment. And he is dedicated, this is Jean-Paul Biberian, who's worked with us for many years, sponsored all the European conferences on cold fusion, physics department at the University of Marseille. And his lifetime specialty is measuring the calorimetry to prove whether cold fusion just happened. Spent his lifetime on it. And Valerie instructed him on this physics. Oh, you just hold the palladium in your hand. It feels a little cool. It was a fun moment. Anyway, so the question we need to play with here at our moment, this is the agonizing question of the moment is, why does that certain geometry of wave convergences, in addition to creating suction to center, create self-organization, negentropy, order? We would like to know why. I mean, practical examples of this is, you will only see the green flash at sunset on the perfect sea because the atmosphere is fractal, right? Or you only see the rainbows when Tibetans die because the atmosphere got more fractal. So it's actually the fractality of the air that created the rainbow, and the Tibetan, by dying, accomplished that because he added centripetal force to its environment. It's well documented. You see rainbows when Tibetan clouds die. Well, let's analyze the physics. So we need to understand why this particular wave geometry makes order. If we really understood for ourselves, we could take that home with us and take our dreams and recreate stars. What's more fun? So example here would be perhaps the first time in physics when negentropy was proven in time reversal was when they took two lasers and caused them to smash, basically. And this was called four-wave mixing, and we talked about it many times because the two waves precisely opposing in laser physics that produce phase conjugate optics and then time reversal and negentropy, well proven in phase conjugate optics. These two waves have to be angstrom accurate. And the shorter the wavelength, the more accuracy required to get the pine cones to kiss noses. Now, since there's longer wavelengths in the Theraphi, you can play a bit. But actually, if you get the alignment and spacing pretty accurate, it's a little better. It's sweeter, actually. And of course, then if you line it up with the longitudinal wave of the Earth, even better. So, what they observed in phase conjugate optics was increased order, negentropy, and they called it time reversal. But there's a bit of a caveat on the miracle here. You know, the Course in Miracles was actually wrong. They said no order of difficulty in miracle. There is an order of difficulty in miracle. It's the laws of physics that make them happen. So the miracle that happened was that you could take the rusted steel and return it to become unrusted. You could increase order. They named that time reversal. But they cannot take unrusted steel and make it rust. In other words, you can only return to a past of greater order. Very important physics. This is later when we use the Theraphi to de-differentiate stem cells back to the primeval state. All stem means is revert back to the root of the fractal as a wave path. That's what it means for a stem cell, right? So if you want to time reverse a stem cell, there's a certain point past which you cannot take it because it returns to its point of maximum order only. My hair's standing up because, yeah.
Charge.
So we want to understand what it is about the wave geometry that causes negentropy. This is our issue. there is a, well, we want to start with as much rigor on this question as we can, and that obviously is the physics literature. The physics literature says you take these two squirt gun lasers, which are lined up to angstrom level accuracy, and you stick them in what's called a phase conjugate mirror. The phase conjugate mirror is made of something called a phase conjugate dielectric. Remember I hinted we're going to need to talk about dielectrics, right? Which is just the magic stuff you put between the plates of a capacitor so that when it's ringing like a bell, you can send waves to the whole universe. And actually, this beautifully actually introduces the slideshow, which was the, you know, I'm going to show you some old slideshows later, but my first slideshow is actually new, I'm proud to say, because I did something, and it's called fractal propagation. And the key to fractal propagation here that we want to get to in this presentation is the difference between two kinds of wave propagation that Maxwell and Einstein talked about, particularly Maxwell, and later Bearden, and now Eric Dollard, actually, whom Paul knows very well. So this is getting interesting. To tell you why this is important, why two different kinds of wave propagation are so important. When we went to measure the effect of love on trees, and we're going to show you a bunch of pictures of this. You measure the harmonics, it's really kind of fun. Tree huggers, it works. The best people for sending love to trees are actually sacrocranial people, because they can feel the long wave. And we can measure that. But anyway, we're running around measuring trees feeling love. It was hard math, I taught them how to do it. And there are two ways to measure it. Inductive magnetic, a little inductor coil, or capacitive coupling, a dielectric. And what Einstein and Maxwell and Eric Dollard and Bearden and everybody are talking about, the reason the difference between these two kinds of electromagnetic propagation is so important is because, well, this one goes faster, potentially. This one's not limited by the speed of light, we don't think. And also, with this one, you can convey information density with less wattage. So what we found when you... So what we found when we measured the tree inductance here, I'm going to skip ahead in these slides, I just want to show you that. I've got that picture here. That the trees that best conducted the charge were trees that, I think I have it in the tree science here. Oh dear, I'm going to skip ahead. So this is what Patrick is going to be talking about in the Flame and Mind brainwave work. And if you go to flameandmind.com and you hit connect, you click on connect for life force measure, it takes you to bioactivefield.com, which shows examples of measuring life force in trees. And this is really the subject of the afternoon of the last day, so I'm jumping ahead here a bit. But I wanted to show you one slide in particular, if I can find it, which is the difference between inductive and capacitive measures of trees. Yeah, here we are. There we go. So when you measure trees capacitively, and Patrick's going to show more about this, but you can measure miles away. We know that a tree 300 miles away, or at least hundreds of miles away, can pick up when a virus hits a forest over there made of the same tree. Okay, the trees send radio. It's well proven. It's called bioacoustic habitat theory by Bernie Krause. Gorillas in the mix is one of the names for that science. But capacitors, a tree 100 miles over there can send a signal with dielectric propagation very efficiently. But inductively, you got to be very close and very strong to pick up the signal inductively. Here's an example. Now, when I taught HeartMath, this is me. These are our early measures of tree harmonics. And again, we're talking about this on the last day. And I'm bringing it up now only, particularly to talk about this indifference, this idea of the difference between kinds of wave propagation. So this is a tree measure. Literally, we put an inductor coil under the tree. And here, you got to be close. And you got to do more amplify. You got to work harder.
More power.
Yeah, it takes more power. Exactly. So it takes more power to send a signal inductively than capacitively. So somehow, between the plates of this capacitor, you get more magic. You compress the capacitor, that's with tension called voltage. You make it ring like a bell. And when it's ringing like a bell, you literally, this is how you measure dielectric constant. You take a capacitor, you hit it with a hammer called voltage, and you listen. And you listen to how long it rings, like a bell. If it rings forever, you call the dielectric constant infinite. It's precisely like Meetings with Remarkable Men, the famous Sufi movie. The real Sufi saint is the one who knows how to make the perfect echo. Again, my hair stands up.
So it's a tuning fork?
Precisely, it's more than that. It's a tuning fork and a lot more.
What
Exactly.
movie?
The famous Meetings with Remarkable Men about Gurdjieff, where the sacred gymnastics is so blissful at the end that your hair stands up. And they say the bliss in the sacred gymnastics at the end of that film was so strong, it melted the celluloid of the film they used to make the movie. But anyway, the point I want to make is that the Sufi saint was tested and measured by the one who could make the perfect echo. I mean, literally, they're all walking in the valley, and all the Sufi masters get together, and the one who can make the best echo gets the prize for the day and is regarded as saint. And if you want to know what successful death is, that's it. There's no more. The perfect echo is introduction to the only form of immortality that nature knows. That's why the Hopis almost had a rebellion the day the U.S. government said they're going to put steel sewage pipes on their sacred burial ground. Because there's a sacred burial ground, right? All ancestral memories, which is the reason for existence, is ancestral memories. Ask the Hopi, ask the Aboriginal, they're clear. They know what it is. Ancestral memory is that is survival. And so you got this ringing resonance capacitance of Old Arrivie, the sacred burial ground of the Hopi. And you got the U.S. government just in, I'm not saying they're evil, I'm just saying they're dumb. The U.S. government comes in, we need to put some metal pipes over here. There was almost a war. It's very simple because the resonance of that burial ground is lined up on all these magnetic lines, and that capacitance is ancestral memory. So, to design the perfect burial ground, you need to design the perfect bell. And the perfect bell, obviously. So, when we finish our conversations or get further on, as electrical engineers, we should know how to design birth and death. Very simple. We will learn how to make a burial ground, a hospital, a way to die and be born to bring memory through. The physics of rebirthing, for example. So, but back to our physics principle here. The dielectric constant then of the capacitor is when you ring it like a hammer with voltage, which is simply tension or pressure, you measure how long it rings, how efficiently it rings. And when it rings a long time, you call that a high dielectric constant. Now that may sound highly esoteric. How many electrical engineers even know that or care? But did you know that this determines whether your house is inhabitable? Literally. The reason, because your aura is the only way you're going to get immortal. A big aura is life or death. Very simple. You can define you don't need a thick book to know the purpose of life. Very simple. You need a big aura. It gets you through death and into the stars, and nothing else will do. So you got to grow your aura or you're toast. This is not complicated. It's not even rocket science. And so if you're living in a steel aluminum box with dead air and electrosmog, your aura is absolutely, cocooned. Whereas if you're living in a capacitor with a high dielectric constant, organic materials in the house. See, every molecule, when they see how much fun it is to join the club called life, they want to get in. And to get in, you have to pay the dues, which is to get fractal or get dead. So everything that's been part of something alive, limestone, natural fabrics, has been rearranged at a molecular level to be higher dielectric and more charge distribution efficient, which means your aura can breathe through it. So that's why negative ion therapy and Theraphi work better inside structures made of natural material. And negative ion therapy, which is well known, you can even kill out spinal meningitis, all kinds of things with negative ion therapy. It's amazing. Well documented in hospital science, negative ion is healing. A negative ion is highly fractal, highly healing, and very fragile. Very fragile. So big metal things and electrosmog kill negative ions. All that applies to Theraphi. Yes, please.
Can you please repeat why negative ion therapy does not work well if you're not grounded?
A lot of negative ion therapy allows the charge to go through your body directly. Okay, and there's an indirect analog to Theraphi, because Theraphi works better if you get grounded afterwards. But we're using such high voltages here that we need the path to be through your body to its center. And actually, for various reasons of hygiene that Paul will explain in more detail, it is not appropriate to have a person touch the ground while using the therapy. But it is appropriate to get grounded afterwards. But touching the ground during it poses simple, very simple electrical hazards, which should be avoided. But the issue is that in order for that charge to find a spin path to the 0 point, which is the whole goal, the spin path to the 0 point is when you relaxed and felt that rush, and then the spin goes to the center, and you feel your spine, etc., etc. And with the Theraphi, there's so much voltage in that environment that there'd be a hazard if you actually touched ground. That would be hazardous, because we're using, and we need, the high voltage and high frequency is giving us good leverage, but we can't have people touching the ground during the process. And even if the therapist or someone who's operating the plasma machine, maybe doing a little massage or something, the same would then apply to them. That if someone who is touching ground touches someone in the Theraphi who's not touching ground, that's very bad news. Paul will explain more, but it's very simple.
As well, when you're in that field, remember how I showed the waveforms that are canceling each other out. So in the ion therapy, when you're grounded, you're getting those ions into you, they're going through you to the ground, but in the Theraphi, you're between the two lights, so it is providing its own ground in essence.
You've got your own path to the 0 point, hopefully. Yeah. But the trick there is relaxation. Remember, with the live blood cell work, those who relaxed got the result. Those who couldn't relax did not get the result. And it's very simple. Relaxation is conductivity. It's very simple. And so if you can't get relaxed, you're not going to have the results. I even know Kati, she says that when she takes people in the Theraphi, if she senses they're negative or a problem, she says, come back another day, or just wait till there's a positive aura, because you really need that relaxed, safe space, etc., etc. So, we were getting close to this idea of understanding why implosion creates negentropy. And backing up in the conversation, we talked about the two lasers converging precisely to phase conjugate mirror, but we didn't talk about the perfect dielectric. We started talking about what a dielectric is. A dielectric constant, now you know, a high enough dielectric constant in a capacitor is the definition of a 0 point energy device. When the dielectric constant goes up a certain point, that means you just built 0 point energy access. The energy crisis is over. And there are barium, strontium, titanate, esoteric crystals, and super high dielectric constant. And these things are magic. Just to give you an idea how much fun it is, the physics paper on this is called Alice in Barium Titanate Land. You look up the paper, it's a real fun thing. And barium titanate is a phase conjugate dielectric. So that means that there's a certain kind of insulator, the dielectric, between the two plates of the capacitor, which causes the waves of charge, when they converge, to do the same thing that lasers do when they phase conjugate and make time reversal and negentropy. And to visualize that, it's simple. There's a certain kind of material that causes the waves to do the spiral squirt gun, pine cones, kiss nose.